Today on this Warhammer 40k competitive breakdown, we're going to be taking my most recent Star Shatter Arsenal list in this new meta and showing you exactly how I deploy it on the tabletop and potentially going over some first turn moves. So if you're somebody that's struggling on maybe either what to run in Star Shatter right now, or especially how to deploy your Star Shatter Arsenal list on the tabletop, you're going to want to stick around because we're going to go over all those details today. And without further ado, let's get into it. So on my past live stream, I went over this list. And if you haven't seen that yet, definitely go ahead and check it out. And a lot of you had mentioned, hey, we would really like to have a visual of TTS for these deployment breakdowns. If you're not familiar with TTS, it stands for Tabletop Simulator. And you can find it on Steam. And yeah, you just download that, and then there are a couple plugins. There's plenty of videos on YouTube. Go and look it up of people doing a great job explaining how to set up TTS and all that stuff. But it is a great tool to practice, and I figure we display it on here today to make it maybe a little bit easier. And let me know your thoughts if this is easier for you all to learn and you get more value out of it, because at the end of the day, that is what counts. So we are doing Layout 6, Crucible of Battle, and figure walk you through step by step of exactly how I deploy the Star Shatter Arsenal list. So we are running the race in conjunction with the Silent King, and then we have a lot of little accessory pieces to go with them for scoring and good board control. So usually to start here, we are going to be deploying our infiltrators most likely. Again, this is going to be situational. It does depend on the matchup, but I think pretty much in every Necron list right now, you are not leaving home without a squad of infiltrators, and especially flayed ones. I was kind of surprised they did not go up in points, or at least to like 65, because at 60 points, they are just so good. Now, on Layout 6, it's a little tricky because there's not like a ton of good staging points, like, you know, for instance, like Layout 1 or something like that up in the midboard. Usually on most matchups, I like to deploy them somewhere around here, and then just having them 1 inch away from the wall, so of course they don't get charged. And you're going to see why this is the case here in a little bit, just to help screen some of my key assets here and avoiding some sort of like first turn rush where they're going to be hitting the flayed ones and not my key resources back here, because that's what we definitely do not want. Okay. So the flayed ones there, and the next thing I probably do is start measuring my line of sight lines. If you've seen some of my previous deployment videos, I love using my sticks to measure out what my deployment lines are looking like before I actually deploy. So I would put like a stick down here. I might measure like this line here as well. And essentially this is just simulating, okay, if an opponent was moving up some sort of resource, whether it's a Vindicator, like a Rogel Dorn, you know, Ballistus Dreadnought, whatever it may be, what does that line look like if they're up on the midboard? Okay, so basically I know, or it makes the headspace a little bit easier in terms of I know this area right here is going to be more or less a safe pocket for me. If that makes sense. So I'm going to change this to yellow so it's easier to see for you. Okay, so this is our line of sight line right there. And let's go back to deploying some of our units. Okay, so next up, we don't really want to expose our game plan too much. So we're, again, going to be kind of just deploying some pieces that don't really matter. So the next thing is we're going to be putting a unit of scarabs, and they are just going to be positioned right over here. Okay. I do like scarabs in this matchup. You could put them over here potentially as well, but they're mainly there for potentially, we do need to think about containment turn 1. So there's a couple options. Let's just say for this instance, we can just put them right here. Okay. And you can see here, since we measured our line of sight lines, we're keeping them relatively safe, so you don't have to worry about them just getting shot for no reason turn 1, which is great. All right. Next up, we are going to put down a Triarch Stalker. I still personally love them in Star Shatter. And you're going to see here he can fit perfectly right in this little cubby hole. So it gives us flexibility to either scout up if we are going second, or if we're going first, we can potentially scout him up over here. And I'm going to explain why. I'm going to cool here in a second. Or we can just keep him there. So Trike Stalker goes there, gives us some options. And then next up, we are going to put down a Doomsday Arc. And that Doomsday Arc is just going to go back here. It's a nice, safe little pocket. And again, this is going to give us flexibility where we're covering line of sight lines. So, you can shoot down this way, or, you can shoot down this way, or down this firing lane. So it covers a lot of different angles there for that Doomsday Arc. Okay. Next up, we are going to have some race here. So we have a block of race with the crypto thralls. So especially in this meta right now, it's going to be tough to say, especially with this new DACA detachment, how survivable race are going to be in this meta, pending any changes, of course. But basically what we want to do is we want to put the crypto thralls up here because they have the least amount of movement. So essentially you're creating what we call like a leapfrog scenario for the race. Because yes, the crypto thralls do slow them down, but the biggest thing is that Star Shatter has a primary problem. And really the only two ways to solve is you could go like really MSU, or you're forced to put the king on the objective, the unkillable king. But I would say right now, especially with Eldar and orcs being so popular, I don't think that is the case anymore. So have to come up with another solution. And I think running a Wraith Silent King package makes a lot of sense. So we're going to put the race more or less right there, keeping them out of line of sight, all that good stuff. And then we are going to put a Catacomb Command Barge over here. Or you might even be able to like scoot some of these back. Or meander them in a way where they can fit. So it looks something like that. So we have the Catacomb Command Barge there. So the Catacomb Command Barge is going to give all the race OC3. Got the Res Orb in there. And then in Star Shatter, what's nice, you still do have the Stratagem to reanimate as well when you're on an objective at the end of your fight phase, which is pretty cool. It's only D3 because they're probably not going to be next to Reanimator. But this is a really strong package because now you essentially have an OC 24 unit that is really durable. And then especially with the Res Orb, you can use once per game as well. I definitely think it's a nice little kit there. So next up, what we want to do here is I want to put a hex mark right here-ish, or maybe like back here, potentially like underneath the Triarch Stalker, or like beside it. The reason for this is, our thing got rotated here. The reason for this is so this is the hex mark with the chrono impedance fields. And the one thing that is interesting with running this enhancement is a lot of times turn one, you don't want to expose the king. And so one thing or one combo that I really like is, especially if you're going first, it gives you the option to put out the stalker. So you can scout him up 8, and then he's still going to be within 6 because they changed the enhancement where you have to trigger it at the start of the command phase before you're moving. So the hex mark can give still the enhancement to the Triarch Stalker turn 1 because you're probably not giving it to the Silent King. So the Triarch Stalker now for 110 points is going to be -1 damage, 12 wounds, T9, 4 up invul, and you could simply just put him on the point, or depending on where your opponent's resources is, that's where you want to look for. So if they're like, if they have like a hard-hitting unit here or here, if there's a way for you to avoid that resource, you'd be able to like shift over the Stalker here and potentially get on the point with an advance, or you could put him here and say, hey, here's OC, 4 OC on the objective. What do you want to do about it? And it prevents you from having to put the race on that objective the first turn and just kind of stage them up, because the meta with a couple of these matchups is extremely lethal, and forcing them to commit to the Triarch Stalker first, because he's one of those units, kind of like Xeris and a couple others in the Necron lineup, that you have to commit more in terms of trying to kill him than you would necessarily like. And especially in some cases, it might even be worth it to give him -1 to wounds if it means him surviving. I know it is 2 CP now, which is pretty rough, but I think -1 damage, T9, 4 up invul, 12 wounds is annoying enough for your opponent to really have to commit something real that first turn to get rid of him, or putting something on the point. And then at that point, then you can start getting value for your Doomsday arcs and everything else. Because the biggest thing with Star Shatter, the problem it runs into is like if you don't put like something real to get the game going in those first turns, you're really not getting a lot of value out of the arcs in the Silent King, because then your opponent isn't forced to put anything out that's meaningful, right? So just something to think about there. So next up, we are going to put a spider down. And this is what I was talking about before as far as like trying to protect your key resources. So like a spider, we'd probably deploy right here. And then next up, we're going to put the Silent King. He's going to go right here. Like there. That should be more or less safe. Or you could like back him up like a little bit. And again, we're kind of looking for this line right here. And as you can see, we are staying safe there. Sorry about the rotation. That's the biggest thing. I want to keep this screen static so you all aren't getting a headache. That's the that's the biggest thing. All right, so now we're gonna put down this this reanimator. He might go. Sometimes there is like a little pocket. You might be able to put him right here. You're just gonna have to read this on the line, or you can shift these over. But this is usually a pretty safe pocket for him right there, where they can't interact with him. They can't run down here. And then after the first turn, you can like stage all this stuff up. And then the next up we have a hex mark. So I should actually put in what's in reserve. So we're gonna have a hex mark destroyer in reserve. We're gonna have a Doomsday Arc also in reserve. I should preface as well, this Catacomb Command Barge has the enhancement for the reroll. Reroll 1s to hit and reroll 1s to win. So it gives you the flexibility having this arc in reserve that you have rerolls over here and you have rerolls over here. So depending on where your opponent wants to commit to, you have the flexibility to drop an arc here. You're going to get double rerolls, or you can drop it over here. And this arc's still going to get rerolls from the king here, or the Doomsday Arc's going to get rerolls from the barge over here. Okay, so these are going to be our reserve units. And then we have a unit of Tomb Blades. I think Tomb Blades are fantastic. If you're running them, it makes a lot of sense. And again, we want to think about, okay, where are we really wanting to scout turn one? So we could be looking at trying to deny our opponent's primary. That's a lot of time we're trying to or doing some sort of move block. So you could, oops, didn't mean to move the king there. So you could have them here to do some sort of like scout maneuver, or you could scout them back here out of line of sight if you're going second, and then on your first turn you have flexibility to go over here and maybe deny your opponent's primary turn one, which is because Tomb Blades are OC2, so OC6 for the unit. If they don't have any sort of decent Overwatch threat, it's a very easy primary denial. You're screening the board, easy secondary points as far as if you draw engage turn one or storm hostile. This unit offers a lot of flexibility in the early game that really no other unit in the Necron lineup has. Again, sorry, the board rotated there. Okay. And then usually I'll have just like a Locust Destroyer in reserve. You could have them on the board, but I like having this in reserve just as like extra utility. If I need a screen, drop something in, it gives me flexibility, put the hex mark somewhere else. And this is more or less what it would look like. Of course, the Stalker would be back here. But yeah, and like a turn one move, what you'd be looking like. So if you're going first, you know, I'd be maybe looking to scout the Tomb Blades up, depending on what my secondaries are, to here. Looking for maybe some sort of move block. There's really easy move blocks like this section or this section just to slow your opponent down. Or if there's not anything worth it, then I would probably just scout them behind here. And then it gives me flexibility to either swing this way or swing this way, right? To interact with the board. Same thing with this. I would be giving scout here. and then moving the Triarch Stalker on the objective, or it could swing him over here, which is kind of nice, and then giving him the -1 damage. After the Hexmark gives the -1 damage, then you have the flexibility to swing him over here, moving up the Scarabs, and then that next turn, the King is over there, something like that, you can give him the -1 damage and move him out. So gives you some flexibility there, which is kind of cool. And then, of course, like Wraiths are going to move up. Depending on the matchup, you might advance them and put them all the way up on the objective, or maybe just staging them here and just having the Stalker on the objective turn 1. So it gives you options there. And then, again, you have your Hexmark in... sorry, you can't see the board. Get better at that. And then, again, you have the Hexmark, Doomsday Ark, and the Locust Destroyer in reserve. So... yeah, this is my most recent Star Shatter Arsenal list. That would definitely, like, if I was playing in like a local RTT or a tournament coming up, definitely something I would be excited to run. But yeah, let me know what you saw this video, if you like more of the TTS lineup than the other. But yeah, if you stuck around this long, appreciate you watching. I'm gonna link 2 videos up top, and we'll catch you in the next one.